My husband Mark and I always dreamed of finding the perfect home to raise our two daughters, Lily, who was 10, and Sophie, who was 7. We found a beautiful Victorian home nestled in a quiet neighborhood. We knew it was the one when we saw it. It was charming with just the right amount of old-world character. The house stood tall with its intricate wooden carvings, stained glass windows, and wraparound porch that seemed to invite us to it. We moved in with high hopes and hearts full of excitement. The first night in our new home, however, marked the beginning of our nightmare. After a long day of unpacking, we finally settled into our new routines. The girls were thrilled with their new bedrooms and even more enchanted by the house's hidden nooks and crannies. We tucked them into bed, reading their favorite stories until they drifted off to sleep. Exhausted, Mark and I collapsed into our own bed, feeling a sense of accomplishment and excitement for the future. Little did we know that night would be the start of something we couldn't have imagined.
That night, after we tucked in Lily and Sophie, Emily and I went to bed, exhausted but happy. Around 3 a.m., I woke up suddenly. Everything was unnaturally quiet, and I realized I couldn't move. It felt like a heavy weight was pressing down on my chest, pinning me to the bed. I tried to scream to wake Emily, but no sound came out. I was utterly helpless. At the foot of the bed, I saw it. A shadowy figure. It was like a dark silhouette against the dim moonlight filtering through the curtains. The figure just stood there watching me. Its presence was cold and menacing. It started whispering something, but the words were unintelligible, like they were from another world, a language I couldn't understand. My heart pounded in my chest, but I was completely paralyzed, unable to do anything but stare back. It felt like an eternity before I could move again. When I finally broke free from the paralysis, the figure was gone, but the fear lingered. I was drenched in sweat and shaking. Emily was still peacefully asleep beside me, unaware of the terror I had just experienced. I sat up, trying to calm my racing heart and wondering if it had all just been a nightmare. But deep down, I knew something was more at play. That was just the beginning of the nightmares that haunted me night after night.
As the days turned into weeks, Mark's episode of sleep paralysis became more frequent and increasingly disturbing. Each time, the shadowy figure appeared closer, its whispers growing louder and more menacing. The weight of these nightly terrors began to take a toll on him. He became more withdrawn and anxious, the bags under his eyes growing darker with each passing day. Meanwhile, our daughters started mentioning an imaginary friend they called the Sad Lady. They said she visited them at night, telling them stories and sometimes crying.
She said she missed her baby so much and wanted to find him. She told us that her baby was taken away and she's been looking for him ever since.
Concerned for our family's well-being, I began researching sleep paralysis and discovered a link between the episodes and hauntings. I spent countless hours reading articles, watching documentaries, and diving into forums where others shared their experiences. The more I read, the more I realized that our situation was not unique. Many people reported similar episodes in houses with dark histories. Digging deeper, I uncovered the dark history of our house. Decades ago, it was home to a woman named Margaret who had lost her child under mysterious circumstances. In her grief and despair, she took her own life. Her spirit was said to still haunt the house, searching for her lost baby. Determined to protect my family, Mark and I decided to confront whatever was haunting us. We searched the house for clues about Margaret's past. One stormy evening, we ventured into the basement, a place we had avoided due to its damp and eerie atmosphere. The basement was cold and musty, with a faint smell of mildew in the air. The walls were lined with cold shelves, sagging under the weight of dusty books and forgotten trinkets. Cobwebs clung to the corners, and the dim light from our flashlights casted long, flickering shadows.
Emily, look over here. There's something behind these old crates.
Mark pointed to a corner where several old wooden crates were stacked unorderly. Together, we moved them aside, revealing an old trunk locked and covered in layers of grime. The trunk was ornate, with brass fittings and a faded crest that hinted at its age and importance. My heart pounded as Mark pried it open with a crowbar, revealing a collection of personal belongings. There were yellowed letters, photographs, and a weathered diary. The air seemed to grow colder as we opened the trunk, as if we were disturbing something that had laid undisturbed for decades. I opened the diary and start reading. November 3rd, 1923, they took my baby away. The doctors told me he was sick, but I know the truth. They were experimenting on him. I hear his cries at night, and my heart breaks anew every time. The diary detailed horrific experiments conducted on patients, including children. Margaret's child had been one of the victims. It was her grief that turned into rage, trapping her spirit into the house. Her writings were filled with anguish and a desperate need for justice. She wrote of shadowy figures, experiments, and the inhumane treatment her child had endured. As we read further into the diary, a clearer picture of Margaret's suffering emerged. The experiments were conducted in secret, hidden from the outside world. Margaret's baby, along with other children, were subjected to cruel medical procedures under the disguise of treatment. The notes detailed their screams, the cold metal instruments, and the heartless doctors who saw them as mere subjects. The diary mentioned a specific room in the house that was used for these experiments, a small hidden chamber hidden behind a false wall in the attic. Armed with this new information, we made our way upstairs. The attic was cluttered with old furniture, forgotten family heirlooms, and dusty antiques. The air was thick with dust, making it hard to breathe. After what felt like hours of searching, we finally found the hidden door. It was cleverly concealed behind an old wardrobe, the seams almost invisible. Mark pushed it open, revealing a small, sterile room filled with outdated medical equipment. The sight sent shivers down my spine. Inside, we found more evidence of the horrors that had taken place. Old medical records, faded photographs of the children, and Margaret's locket. We gathered everything, determined to bring it to light and help Margaret's spirit find peace. We contacted a spiritual medium who guided us through a ritual to honor Margaret. We set up a small memorial with the locket, photographs, and other items that might bring her comfort. That night, we performed the ritual. The air was thick with anticipation, the room filled with the scent of burning sage and the soft glow of candlelight. We spoke words of comfort, acknowledging Margaret's suffering and assuring her that her child's pain was known and mourned. That night, Mark told me he experienced one last episode of sleep paralysis, but this time, instead of fear, he felt overwhelming relief. The shadowy figure appeared clearly to be Margaret, silently weeping. She looked at me with gratitude on her face and slowly faded into the light. The haunting ceased, and the oppressive atmosphere lifted. Our family could finally enjoy our dream house, and the house felt warm and inviting once more. We had given Margaret the closure she needed, and in doing so, found our own peace.